Good evening, class.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. You are welcome to another session for research methods. And I trust
Thank you.
you have been having a good Easter, although you are supposed to stay at home. Okay, so today we'll continue from where we left off the other time. Our objective the last time we met was to.
Okay.
Our objective the last time we met was to try to discuss literature review, and then we tried to look into how to find literature. Then we progressed on to discuss research gaps and how to identify the gaps from the literature you have downloaded and then use them to be able to come up with a research title. Later on, when we have rounding up, I'll demonstrate to show that the videos that we produced last week for the sessions that we had online have been uploaded on the internet and made available or accessible to you through Sakai. So I'll go to Sakai and then show you how to access the sessions we have recorded so far. Okay, so when we began our sessions on literature review, we emphasized that literature review is a synthesis of available resources and materials with a strong relation to the topic in question, and is accompanied by a description and a critical evaluation of each work. What we tried to do was to understand how to find literature, how to be able to download the literature, and how to be able to identify research gaps from the literature. Today, we are progressing on to try to understand how to write. That's one of the key steps in literature review. When you have read all the literature, how do you then put it together into a write-up? To enable me do that, I want to go back to a definition. The last two sessions that we have had so far was to look at the first part of the definition that emphasizes on a synthesis of available resources and materials with a strong relation with the topic in question. So that's what we did the first 2 weeks. But now we are going to try and do the next part which is about writing, accompanied by a description and the critical evaluation and comparative analysis of each work. So I'm going to learn how to write the literature review out. So that's what we will try to do. To be able to do that, I want you to understand that this part of the definition talks about description and then a critical evaluation and comparative analysis. In literature review, there are two dominant ways of writing. One is a descriptive way of writing, and the other one is a critical analytical way of writing, where you do critical evaluation and comparative analysis of each work. What we like to see more is the critical evaluation and comparative analysis of each work. But it also relies on the description. So I'm going to explain the two of them so that you can understand the differences. Now, to write a literature, when you're doing a long essay, your structure looks like this fairly. Chapter 1, chapter 2. Sometimes the chapter 3 that's supposed to be context of study, it goes to chapter 4. Then chapter 3 then becomes research methodology, and then the context of study comes after the research methodology. But then you have the results and discussion conclusion. The literature review itself is a chapter, means a chapter in which you review the literature and then point out, explain concepts that you have come across in your work. For example, if I'm doing a long essay on poverty and unemployment, I'll spend my chapter 2 explaining poverty and unemployment. And if my research focus is to explore factors that influence poverty and unemployment, I'll do that discussion in chapter 2. But throughout your writing process of the whole long essay, you are also conducting a review. You are reading other people's work to put together to write a different section. So even in chapter 1, you read some literature and write out a section, paragraphs in a work, which will require you to read and review literature. So the literature review is a product like chapter 2, where you see a whole chapter for literature review. But throughout the whole long essay, you are also doing a review. You are writing and reading and reviewing people's statements, reviewing academic works, and using that to write different sections of your work. For example, in introductory chapter, your objective is to point out the research gaps and then be able to tease out your research purpose, your research questions, and your research objectives. But in chapter 2, you are trying to explain the key concepts in the area and trying to also go ahead to develop what you call the conceptual framework for the research, or the research framework for the research. Then when you go to your methodology chapter 2, you're going to discuss the methods you're going to use and justify them. Justifying the methods, you also need some literature to read. When you get into discussion, you are supposed to discuss the results in line with the literature that you have read in chapter 2. And in concluding, you're also supposed to tell us why your work is different and what are the new things you'll be able to find. The only way you can point out the new things you'll be able to find is to also relate it to the chapter, relate it with your chapter 1, and relate it to the previous literature you have read. So throughout the long essay, we do a lot of different types of reviews, we do a lot of different types of writing. So let's get into what the writing itself entails. So I mentioned earlier that there's descriptive and analytical writing from the definition of literature review. Descriptive writing that has a primary purpose of just summarizing what somebody has done. So when somebody does a research, what you see in the work is more, if you summarize what the person has done, you're actually talking about descriptive writing. And you usually see that even in abstracts of people, of academic work. Usually an abstract to just describe in a snapshot what the person covered in his research. So descriptive writing tries to summarize what others have done without passing judgment on it. So you end up seeing that it may come across in a statement like, Kwame Nat did a study and found out this. I'll give examples as we go on. But analytical writing goes beyond descriptive writing by passing judgment. So it doesn't want to just describe it. It tries to look at different works others have done, put 2 or more papers together, 2 or more academic works together, and then you try to pass judgment or do a synthesis and come out with an analytical perspective or critical perspective of the phenomenon or whatever he's discussing or she is discussing. So let me just go into an example so that I can have a better understanding. Okay, so this is a writing about unemployment in Africa. Just a piece of work that somebody wrote. And there are 3 references here. So all the 3 references refer to 3 different pieces, 3 different articles that the person has read. So he has downloaded papers from 3 different authors and he has put them together to write. Now, let's read through it and let me point out why I say it is descriptive writing. A study by Uche 2000 on unemployment in the banking industry in Nigeria highlighted that inflation affected the turnover of banks, which also had an effect on salary payments. Over 2,000 bank employees lost their jobs by the end of 1999. That's all. Then it goes on. Tackle 2005 discussed the lack of capital for startup initiatives and high interest rates on loans stalled entrepreneurial ventures and contributed to unemployment or the lack of job opportunities. Then lastly, he says that in a recent study on unemployment in Egypt, Salia 2011 found political instability, poor governance, and lack of foreign direct investment to be critical factors influencing unemployment. Now, what you see here is that there are 3 different authors who have written works on unemployment from different perspectives. Because we argue that this is descriptive writing is because all that is being done here is just describing the different works that has been done and what they had achieved. So Salia found, Taku discussed, a study by Uche on unemployment in banking industry Nigeria highlighted. So all it does is just describing the content of these papers. You don't see any position, you don't see any comparison between the 2 papers. You don't see any attempt to even try to do a critical review of it by passing a judgment on it or saying that a disagreement on agreement, or trying to find out whether the viewpoints are consistent with each other, are corroborating each other. Nothing like that is being done. Descriptive writing is just very basic. It just describes what was done in the studies. If you do that too much in your work, it's going to be less analytical, and then your supervisor or the person who's reading your work will say that, where is your viewpoint? Where is the analysis in it? Where is the synthesis? It seems you're just taking everything that everybody has said. You're not passing judgment. Now let's look at another example, which is analytical writing. Now, this is an extract from something I'm going to show you later, but this is a piece of analytical writing. So it says that literature demonstrates that the key factors which contribute to unemployment in Africa have tended to change over time. And that opening sentence itself is a summary of what has been done. But before an author could say literature demonstrate that the key factors which contribute to unemployment in Africa have tended to change over time, it means that the author has read. And he has read different literature to be able to point out that, or to be able to come to an agreement or put out this argument that the key factors that which contribute to unemployment have tended to change over time. It means that the factors have not been the same factors. The factors tend to differ over time. So because he has placed an argument that we need the evidence for it. So it means that the next set of sentences should be evidence that tend to show that, first of all, there are different factors of unemployment in Africa, and these factors tend to change over time. So those two things have to be established. And if you read on it, it goes and say that another argument is placed according to the timeline. So it first of all starts from the 1990s, because he said over time. I'm not saying that all analytical writing likes to write over time, but I'm just trying to use this as extract as an example. Okay. In the late 1990s, researchers argued that inflation and low wages contribute to unemployment. Then in the brackets, you put Uche 2000 and then Benson 2003. Now the sentence in the late 1990s, researchers argued that it's so a summary from reading both Uche's work and Benson's work. So after reading those two works, this author passed a comment that, or an argument, or passed a judgment on it and said that in the late 1990s, researchers argued that inflation and low wages contributed to unemployment, or contribute to unemployment. Okay, so they are giving the reference. Now, because he has given the reference, we want to believe that the comment he has made here, the argument he has put across concerning researchers argument, those researchers, that argument is based on the readings of Uche and then the reading of Benson's work. But because we have not read it, we that we are reading, we have not read it, he needs to try to illustrate to show that it is true that one of these authors emphasized the point he's trying to put across here. So he goes to say, for example, a study by Uche 2000 on unemployment in the banking industry in Nigeria highlighted that inflation affected turnover, which also had an effect on salary payments. Over 2,000 bank employees lost their jobs by the end of 1999. Now, what you are seeing here, this particular sentence that we have here, a study by Uche, this whole sentence is a descriptive writing, a descriptive piece. But now it has been placed alongside an argument so that the argument is placed across and then the descriptive is rather used as an evidence or an illustration to be able to and help us understand the evidence or know what is doing the evidence. The evidence are the Uche and then the Benson. So after the argument was put across that in the late 1990s, researchers argued that inflation and low wages contributed to unemployment, he needed to illustrate it so that can enhance our understanding. So he went on to say that, okay, these authors, Uche and Benson, are the ones who I read, and they are saying that. But let me illustrate one of them for you to see, so that even if you have not read the document, when you just see this descriptive, a summary of what Uche found, you can better understand that what I'm saying. You can lend some credence to it and say that this is true. So in the first paragraph, you realize that there's an attempt to be able to give evidence to the fact that literature, there are different factors that contribute to unemployment in Africa. And he has given the first timeline, the 1990s. And in the 1990s, he has given us an example to be able to point to us that what he's saying is true. Okay. So from there, he goes on to another timeline and says that, on the other hand, by 2004, researchers discussed that lack of capital for startup initiatives and high interest rates on loans stalled entrepreneurial ventures and contributed to unemployment or the lack of job opportunities. So now he's talking about another set of factors. I think he has mentioned lack of capital for startup initiatives and high interest rates. And then in the high interest rates and the lack of capital, he has put a reference there, TACO 2005. And then he goes on to say, a comparative study, Kingston, on SME industry in Ghana and Uganda shared similar findings on the effect of startup capital and interest loans on entrepreneurship and unemployment. So what you see here is that there is a work by Kingston and a work by TACO. Both works are being put together to be able to give us some evidence that there is lack of startup capital and then the high interest rates are part of the reasons why there's unemployment, contributory reason why there's unemployment or lack of job opportunities. Then it goes on to another timeline and it says that in recent study on unemployment in Egypt, SALIA 2011 found political instability, poor governance, and lack of foreign direct investment to be critical factors influencing unemployment. So now he has been able to point out SALIA's own. Then he adds on that other studies in Cote d'Ivoire and Sierra Leone attest to these findings. Now what you are seeing here is that, first of all, the author has argued that there are key factors that contribute to unemployment. And those key factors, the first group is inflation and low wages. The second group is lack of startup capital and high interest rates. The third group has to do with political instability, poor governance, and lack of foreign direct investment. And he had placed different references together to be able to show that this is true. And he has now put descriptive examples from the papers to be able to show that this is true. So he concludes by saying, in effect, unemployment in Africa, he's passing his final judgment, or his final concluding argument on what he has written. In effect, unemployment in Africa may be viewed from a multi-factor, a multifaceted perspective. It cannot be reduced to one single factor. He can only make this argument because he has demonstrated from the above that there are three different groups of factors that influence unemployment if you are looking at the timeline, or that contribute to unemployment if you look at the timeline. And he has been able to provide those evidences by references that you see there. He has illustrated and shown examples. Now, remember the work is about Africa. So the first set of examples came from Nigeria. Then he went on to show that even in Ghana and Uganda. Then after that, he went to show Cote d'Ivoire and Sierra Leone and Egypt. So now he has covered about 5 or 6 different African countries across the different regions in Africa, all trying to point out that these are the factors that contribute to unemployment in Africa. So you can see that he's triangulating information from different authors. He's also translating studies from different countries. He said Africa. He's not just staying on West Africa. He showed examples from East Africa, and he has shown examples from North Africa, and he has also shown examples from West Africa. So you have got about 3 different regions in Africa being shown here. And after the final example, which was in Egypt and Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, he concludes by saying that when I look at all this and I reflect, I can now say that unemployment in Africa can be viewed from a multi-factor perspective. It cannot be reduced to a single factor. And what he has tried to emphasize here is that, first of all, there are different factors. And the factors tend to change over time. And because there are different factors and they tend to change over time, you can't discuss unemployment in Africa by just narrowly focusing on only 2 factors. There are a number of other factors that contribute to unemployment in Africa. So what you see here is an example of analytical writing. What you see here is a very clear example of analytical writing. Now, what are the differences? Analytical writing tries to identify significance of what has been done and evaluate the strengths and weaknesses and weighs one piece of information against the other. If we go back and we look at the example, look at this one. Salia found, this is a descriptive writing, this part. Salia found political instability, poor governance, and lack of foreign direct investment to be critical factors influence unemployment. Then he does a comparison, weighing one piece of information with another. Other studies in Cote d'Ivoire. So when they put together in that small 3 or 4 lines, you end up saying this is an analytical paragraph or set of sentences that have been put together to be able to provide evidence to an argument analytically. So it weighs one piece of information against the other. It makes reasoned judgment. Look at this one. In effect, unemployment in Africa may be viewed from a multifaceted perspective. Another one, literature demonstrates that. Literature demonstrates means that you have read the literature already, and you say literature demonstrates that the key factors. So it makes reasoned judgments. It argues according to the evidence. Let's see again. Okay, in the late 1990s, researchers argued that inflation and low wages contributed to unemployment. Where are the researchers who are arguing? These are the researchers. And are you sure, Richard? So let us show me that you are right. What is it about Uche's work or Benson's work? So for example, Uche 2000 on unemployment in banking industry, an illustration of the evidence. So what we are seeing is that in analytical writing or analytical review, an argument is placed, evidence is provided, and then you go further to illustrate the evidence. An argument is placed, evidence is provided, then we go forward to illustrate the evidence. However, when we go to descriptive writing, it looks like the student is just summarizing different papers and putting them on a piece of paper. A study by Uche said this. Taku said that. And then Salia also found that. There's no concluding sentence that ties everything together. We can't see any reasoned judgment here. We can't see the person weighing one information with another. It doesn't mean that descriptive writing is wrong. Even to be able to write perfectly better in analytical writing, you need descriptive. Right? This part is a descriptive. After stating your argument, you use a descriptive to illustrate it. So a descriptive can help here. Now, what other difference? Okay, so it shows why something is relevant or suitable. It indicates why something will work. It indicates whether something is appropriate or suitable. And then it identifies why timing is important. Now, there could be so many different reasons, but all of this is trying to tell you analytical writing and critical writing involves you trying to identify significance in a person's work and comparing it with another one. So sometimes you weigh the evidence and try to see the weaknesses and the strengths of the evidence that you have. Okay. So what we want to try today to do today is to try to learn how to write analytically. Okay. To be able to do that, the first thing that we need to learn is how to evaluate a source. When we download an article onto our computer, do we just accept what the person has said in the article? Or we can ask, it's better to ask certain questions before you even accept what the person has written in the article. So the first thing to do is that, can you assess whether the content you are downloading from the internet is relevant for your research paper or long essay that you are writing? Is it relevant for it? Are you just going to accept that what is written, or you are going to assess it and say that, oh, there's the person said this, but I've also read another thing and I can see a different perspective, a different view. Okay, so some of the questions you can ask now: who wrote this article? Why did they write it? Sometimes people write the articles and then they have got some particular interest. Let me give you an example. You are writing on the, let's say, inflation in Ghana, and then you see that somebody has put some inflation statistics on Ghana web, and the person doesn't give any reference to it, or even if you give reference, give the reference as Bank of Ghana. If I was writing, I won't quote the person from Ghana web. I'll go to that Bank of Ghana website and ascertain it myself. So that, because Bank of Ghana is more credible than just picking Ghana web and using Ghana web as the example, as your evidence to the argument that's been put across. I'd rather go to Bank of Ghana's website and then check the values for myself. Sometimes the person who is reporting can bias the details or the statistics. You are doing a study on maybe customer service in the telcos, and you're trying to look at how many customers do they have. Sorry. You are trying to check how many customers do they have. So what could happen is that you may quote from, let's say, an institution like Vodafone, and then you may use the Vodafone's information to support your argument. But there is also NCE. NCA may also give you statistics you want to use. If you are using that of Vodafone, you can say Vodafone reports that or claims that this is the number of customers they have. But when you are using that of NCA, you may want to use NCA as the authority, because that's the authority in the authority in the industry, and that governs the industry. So it is more credible for you to say that you are going to use that of NCA, because you know that NCA may have a non-biased view of ideally, NCA will have a non-biased view in trying to report the statistics from Vodafone or from any of the companies. So we always try to evaluate. This example I'm giving, I'm trying to say that evaluate who is telling you, giving you the information. Where are you drawing your information from? Where did you get the data from? Then is the data up to date? You can't go and pick a statistic which was published maybe 10 years ago to support an argument you are making today. For example, if you want to argue that the number of universities in Ghana, or the number of universities in Ghana is 12, maybe that was a statistic as of maybe 2000, the year 2000. But currently, we have more than 12 universities in Ghana. So you can't quote that one to be able to make an argument as of today. It will be better for you to quote, if you are quoting that one, then give us a year in which it was collected, a review was done, and we know that the number of credible institutions which offer tertiary education in Ghana is 12. As of what date? As of what date? And then what else do you know that supports or contradicts the sources of information? So these are some of the things that we ask you to ask yourself whenever you are looking at content from the content from the internet and content from academic sources that you are using in your work. Some of them may be coming from journals, and sometimes some of the journals that you may be reading, you have to be very sure that the journal is a credible journal and is coming from a credible database. That's why I took my time to show you the databases that have usually published credible journals. Okay. So you evaluate the source. Now, after evaluating the source and doing all these things, we expect you to be able to draw from different sources. We don't want to draw from only one source. You have to try and do a synthesis, so you can take it from different sources so that you can get a balanced view. You can also get different evidence type. I told you that some of the sources are journal articles, other sources are periodicals. So sometimes if you need statistics, you may have to go to the periodicals, government documents, and then sometimes you may have to go into statistics from industry reports, like maybe the UN reports, maybe ITU, the International Telecommunication Union reports, or maybe the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor for entrepreneurship data. However, you could also add that one to the academic literature you are reading from journal articles, so that you can get a holistic perspective and a balanced view of the arguments that you are trying to put across. So in your writing, note where you are getting your data from, and try as much as possible to be doing a synthesis all the time, drawing from different sources of information. Okay, so let me just pause a little bit and then go into another write-up and just let's try to see whether we can identify some of the articles that are being used, some of the materials that are being used to write. So I just opened this paper, which is on determinants of female entrepreneurs' growth intention, a case of female-owned businesses in Ghana's tourism sector. So look at this one. There has been a marked increase in female entrepreneurial activity. And recent business statistics identify women as drivers of the economy, of economic growth in many world economies. Now, I say many world economies. As soon as you see many world economies, that means that we expect the person to be drawing not just from one continent, it has to cut across. So you see, Ahmad et al. 2014, Lagowitz et al. 2005, and then Indivo and Catanoni 2015. Now let me just try and do something. Then let's continue. So you have seen these three. Then it says it's undisputable that when more women work, economies grow. Women's economic, managerial, and entrepreneurial activities have a significant impact on economic growth and prosperity. Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. I mentioned it just right now. This is an institution that produces a report yearly on global entrepreneurship. So you can see where it is coming from an industry document, which is an international report. Then January 2007. Then it's countries with high total entrepreneurial activity are associated with high female entrepreneurial activity rates. It says Vel and Van Mil. This is underscored by a general shift from large state-owned corporation to small and medium enterprises, Galloway and Hoodijon and Rogerson. Okay, now I just want us to do a little bit of a check. You see Ahmad et al. 2014 and Lagos 2005. Let's check who are these authors. So I'm going to scroll down to the references so that we can check. So Ahmad et al. Will be the first one. Ahmad et al. Ahmad et al. Is coming from a journal. Look at it. Entrepreneur's Choice in Business Venture. Motivations for choosing homestay accommodation businesses in Peninsular Malaysia. International Journal of Hospitality. Then we said, look, Langowitz is L. So look at that one too. You have it here. Langowitz here. Langowitz is actually coming from a report. They say the executive report, London. It's coming from a report. Global Entrepreneurship Monitor 2004 report on women entrepreneurship. So it's actually come from a report. Then we saw another one, Endivo, the last one, this one, Endivo and Catanoni. That is also coming from a journal, Advances in Hospitality and Tourism Research, an international journal of Ardennes Tourism Faculty. So we have here different articles coming. Some are coming from predominantly journals, and some of them are also coming from reports. So you can see that we are using both journals and reports, which I mentioned earlier, journals and reports, to be able to triangulate. Now, why did they use report? They use report to be able to support some of the arguments that they are putting across concerning statistics and some of the key statements they are saying concerning countries. Now, if you continue, in Ghana, as in most African countries, entrepreneurship has not become very strong, yet its potential to contribute to general socioeconomic growth and to the socioeconomic status of women is recognized. Abo, that's Professor Abo from Business School, and Big Bear. And then Elijah Mensa is here, 2009. Now look at it. After giving in Ghana, for example, then he goes there, for instance, look at what he said. For instance, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor established that Ghana is the only economy with more female than male in entrepreneurship, which is interesting. It's the only economy with more female than male in entrepreneurship. Then that's Kelly 2013. So we can check at Kelly 2013. I think it will refer back to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. Let's check it and see. Kelly will be K. Kelly 2013. Kelly. Global Entrepreneurship Monitor 2010 Women's Report. Center for Women's Leadership. Babson Babson College, that's the US. So you see that we are using the example he gave even about Ghana came from an international report. And you can see, you can realize that it's a combination of journal articles and reports, And those reports are also relatively accessible. They are international reports. If they are, those which are local, like the one from the, so I think a local one, which was from the tourism industry or something like that. We realize, I think that's, realize that it gave the full reference or the name of the journal. Then here is Elijah Mensah. Elijah Mensah 2009. Elijah Mensah and Abo. So let's check the Elijah and Abo. Abo is A, so it will come from the first part. Abo's paper was published in a journal, International Journal of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. He was talking about SMEs access to debt finance. Then you talk about Elijah Mensah, Motivation and Age, an empirical study of women owners of tourism ventures in Ghana, Journal of Travel and Tourism Research. So you see that we are drawing on journals. Remember I mentioned that journals then become part of your work, almost 70% of your work. So you can see that from here. Almost after every about 4 or 5 journals, then you see 1 or 2 reports coming up. So let's go back to our slides and continue from there. So he's triangulating from different sources. Some of them are global reports. Some of them are reports on Ghana, but published globally. So he's not just drawing on only one country or one author. It's not just only Abo's work. Different authors' works are being used. Okay, so now let's come back home and now look at an example here. Now this paper is about social networking in the workplace. So it goes start by saying social networking is increasingly becoming a phenomenon in the social and business lifestyles of employees. Wow. So that's a very interesting argument. So where is your evidence? That's what we'll ask. Then it goes on to say statistics from the 2011 Forbes report on social networking and business stated that 85% of workers in America spend a minimum of 30 minutes of working hours to visit social networking websites. He gives statistics with a periodical. So the evidence is coming from Forbes 2011. Then it goes on to say these statistics are not too far from that of Africans, as a recent study in South Africa found that 70% of South African workers interviewed browse Facebook during the working hours. So what are you seeing here? He's going back to an academic report to be able to show the difference here. So you can see coming from Forbes and coming from an African piece of work. So it's actually showing an example from Africa. Now, Richard, I've been talking about analytical writing. So how did the person write analytically here? Now, this particular sentence, statistics from the 2011 Forbes report, is a descriptive sentence. Another one here, a recent study in South Africa, is also a descriptive sentence. They are all just summarizing. This is summarizing the English paper, and this one is summarizing what is in the Forbes paper. But what makes it analytical are the arguments you put across them or around them, and then the hook phrases that links them together. So now, look, what do I mean by that? Look at this, the opening sentence here. It's actually passing judgment. But then it goes for the evidence after that. It said, social networking is increasingly becoming a phenomenon in the social business lifestyles of employees. Says who? That's the question we'll ask. So we need evidence for that. We need evidence. And instead of giving us evidence just by the reference, he went straight to give an illustration in which it's coming from the evidence. So it goes to say, statistics from the 2011 Forbes report. So now he's using a report. Then after that, he goes to say that a recent study in South Africa found that. Now, the first one was to give you an example from a developed country. The next one was to give an example from an emerging economy. So you can see that one is from South Africa, one from the US. Now, the one from South Africa is joined to the one from the US by a hook phrase or a sentence, a few words, so that they can link them together. This is what it's joining the two sentences, this one. These statistics are not too far from that of Africans. These statistics are not, which statistics? This is referring to the statistics from the Forbes report. I hope you can see. So these statistics are not too far from that of Africans. Then what's that? Then where is the Africans one? Then the next set of words that come follow after a recent study in South Africa. As a recent study, That part is a descriptive writing. What makes the thing analytical is how we join them together. And the definition of literature review says what? A synthesis of available resources here, which have a strong relation with the topic. The topic is about social networking in the workplace. One is coming from here, another is coming from here, and we are linking them together. One is coming from here, another is coming from here, and we are linking them together. We are linking them together. We are linking them together. Okay. So that's what you see in this example. Sorry. That's what you see in this example. Okay. So let's continue. It says that then again, beyond the concern on the growth in the use of social networking platforms in the workplace, there have been concerns about the implications it has on both employers and employees. Then gives Jackson 2012. That there are concerns about how social networking affects both employers and employees. Now, this is another set of writing that he's going to mention. The first one was to establish that there is an increase of the use of social networking in the workplace. That was the first paragraph. Now, the second paragraph is saying that beyond the concern about the increase of social networking use in the workplace, there are other concerns. So if you look at it very carefully, there are two groups of concerns. The one is about increase in the users. The other one is about implications on employers and employees. The first paragraph was about increase in the workplace. The second paragraph is about implications on employees and employers. But to join the two paragraphs together, you see what is happening here. Then again, beyond the concern. So the beyond the concern on the growth in the use of social networking platforms in the workplace is a phrase that is just summarizing everything that was mentioned upstairs. Everything that was mentioned in the previous paragraph. So now we can combine the two together. Now, the writer has made an argument based on Jackson's work. And he has said that there are concerns about the implication it has on employers and employees. Question that comes up is that where are the concerns coming from? Where are the illustration of the concerns? So now he has to illustrate and give evidence. So he says that while some employers have been reported to be requesting access passwords to employee accounts. So in the California Times 2012, there was an article that was showing that some employers are asking employees to give them their access to their employee accounts, access to their own personal accounts on social media, so that they can monitor them, whether they are saying things that promote the company or not promote the company, and they can change some of the discussions or edit and rather do postings or take down postings that doesn't support the company. So some of the employers have been reported by employees, and that was what was happening in California. That's one concern. The next concern is that other firms are exploring policies and strategies to leverage social media in marketing and sales. So the next one is more about strategic issues. How do we use social media for marketing, social networking for marketing and sales? And Carmen's work in 2009 and BBC 2011 have reports or write-ups to showcase that there have been questions concerning those two. So what we see here is that there is also two concerns in the workplace. One from the employees reporting their employers, and one from employers concerned about how they can leverage social media for marketing and sales. Now we are just joined them together, and then we have put a phrase that kind of summarizes everything. There have been concerns about implications social networking has on both employers and employees. So what I'm trying to emphasize and show here is much of it, you realize that social literature review is more about argument, evidence, or an illustration. Argument, illustration, and evidence. So when somebody argues, then you have to provide evidence and sometimes illustrate to enhance our understanding of the evidence. Or you have to provide illustration to be able to have a picture of what he has also read. So we don't just want argument and evidence. We want occasionally you to illustrate the evidence. And that's why you see the illustrations, to be able to give you understanding of what is happening. For example, if I just say that there have been concerns on the implication it has on employers and employees, you ask what are the concerns? So to be able to tell you the concerns, I need to illustrate them. And to illustrate them, I need to go to other papers or the same paper to summarize it and let you know what is in the paper. So descriptive writing supports analytical writing, and other statements to be able to make it put across a critical perspective or a comparative perspective of an argument or of a phenomenon you are studying. So one thing that is advisable to do to be able to do a write-up like that is to ask yourself, what am I looking for? Am I looking for specific arguments or support, or I'm looking for a definition of something? I'm looking for a conceptual model that explains something, or I'm looking for a specific item. Now, what am I trying to emphasize here? Anytime anybody is writing, the most important thing he needs to define is that what is the purpose of what I'm writing, or for that small section. It's important to define your different sections of your work based on what you need to do. If you just get up and you're just writing, you end up realizing that you do a lot of descriptive because you just drop things on the table, on the piece of paper, and they will not make sense. So you have to know, what am I doing here? If it's the introduction of my work, what do I need to do? A research background, what do I need to do? What am I looking for in a research background? If it's a research problem, what am I looking for? In a research problem, I'm looking for gaps. If I'm a research background, I'm trying to show why this area is necessary for us to study. So, or from the industry perspective. So I was trying to show more statistics, like you see what is happening here. The example I read earlier is just it's about a research background. This is about a background to somebody's research. This particular example. So you need to know why you are doing that, what you are aiming to write. If you are writing, trying to do a definition, you have to know, what am I doing at that section? Am I doing presenting a definition of maybe unemployment? Bringing one definition isn't enough. If I just bring one definition, not make it analytical, I may have to bring about 2 or 3 different definitions and then try to point out which of the definitions am I using in my work, or which of the definitions or combination of definitions will I use in my work. Okay, so to go on, I want to show an example. I want to do a lot of examples today so that we can understand what we are studying. So let's see an example here. This is a paper on mobiles and market traders. So look at this one here. There has been a tremendous increase and tremendous growth in the mobile phone ownership and use globally. Now, when you put this word globally, then you have to demonstrate to us. So now look at the next one. Statistics from the International Telecommunication Union tend to suggest that the mobile phone subscribers currently constitute 60% of the world's population. That's as of ITU 2008. The report also suggests that there are now more mobile phone users in developing world than developed world. So now I've left from the global level, I've come to the developing world, then I'm coming to Ghana. In countries like Ghana, it is estimated that there are 50 mobile phone subscriptions per 100 inhabitants, and further, the ratio of mobile cellular subscriptions to fixed lines is 80:1. So then I can say the rapid diffusion of this relatively low-cost technology has spurred a development agenda, questioning how mobile phones can be harnessed more effectively for socioeconomic development in developing economies and other resource-poor contexts. Before you can actually point out this, and I need to show that there's been an increase. And we have argued that it has been increased, ownership of mobile phones increased globally. So when you say globally, you have to really show that globally. So you show the world statistics, you show the developing world against the developed world statistics, then you show Ghana statistics. So that when you put all the 3 together, you can say that, oh, what this guy is saying is true. To be able to write this section, this is an introduction. An introduction, you are trying to show a phenomenon that you want to study, why it is relevant in industry, so or why it is relevant in practice. So you see that most of the things here emphasizes statistics to be able to show what is happening in the real world. Then he goes on to say, initial efforts to finding answers to these questions, that's the question he put here. So this particular sentence is linking the next paragraph to this other paragraph, can be analyzed from 2 perspectives. Now, he's summarizing again. Look at what's happening here. He's saying that initial effort to finding answers to these questions can be analyzed from 2 perspectives. Okay. So let's take our time and look at it carefully. The practitioner perspective and the academic research perspective. So what is he trying to say here? The development agenda which seeks to question how can mobile phones be used for development in developing countries has been answered by 2 groups. One, the practitioners, and another group is the academic perspective. What is he trying to say here? He read practitioner papers and read academic papers and saw that there are two different approaches that these people are using. So what can I do? Then let me explain the two different approaches. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is that what you read is what shapes what you write. But you need to know that when you are writing, you are read quite a lot. You have to know what you are doing in every section. Every writing should have a purpose. The purpose should guide you to let you know what literature will come to that particular area. That's why you should ask yourself, what am I trying to do here? What am I trying to do here? If you are confused, you can look at people's papers to see what did they do in their introduction, so they can model your work after that. What did they do in the at the introduction? What did they do in the research problem? How did they present the research problem? What did they do in their analysis part? What did they do in their discussion section? What did they do in their literature review section, in their methodology section? Try to look at examples and try to use that one to guide you. Some students take people's long essays. Even sometimes the study you are doing, somebody may have done it in a maybe a university in let's say Sweden. I had a scenario like that. I helped supervise a student in Sweden. And then one of my students was doing a work, it was about e-voting. And while my student was doing e-voting in Ghana, he think I didn't know, he went to Sweden, the university in Sweden website and downloaded the thesis the student had. He didn't check who co-supervised the work and went straight and copied sections of the work and submitted it here. Then I pointed out that this work you are reading, is it yours? He said, oh, it's mine. I said, are you sure? Then I pulled out the thesis of the student and showed it to her that you're actually plagiarizing from a similar work I have actually supervised. So sometimes these things can happen. Students don't realize that when you're copying from somebody may get to know. When we do plagiarism checks, we get to know. What I emphasize is that learn the style of writing from others and how they present their arguments. When you look at somebody's own, try to get the idea. Sometimes there may be some hook phrases you can copy. Those ones are common to all. For example, if somebody said highlighted, you can also use highlighted. Somebody said argued, you can also use argued. If somebody said there's a tremendous increase, you can also be a tremendous increase and then point out whatever you want to show the increase has happened in. So learn people's style of writing. That's one thing I would advise you when you are reading other people's work. Okay. So please, I also understand that we draw from different sources of literature. We draw from academic literature, we draw from practitioner literature too. But you have to know where it matters and where to use that. Okay. So how do you do the write-up? The first thing is that when you read, try to break what you are reading, try to do a synthesis of what you have read and see what is the essence of the discussion here. The essence of the discussion here is about two themes. One is from this paper is about social employee view perspective on social media privacy. Another one is about sales and marketing strategies in social media. So now when you see that there are two different perspectives, then you can realize that, okay, now I need to present the perspectives together. So I can write a summary sentence that will try to summarize each of the topic sentence or summary sentence that will try to summarize each of the papers I've read. So you see this down it's here. While some employers have been, okay, so this one is the summary. Employers have been reported to be requesting access to passwords of employee accounts. So this one is a summary. So this is the first summary. Then he has another one. Other firms are exploring how policies. Okay, this is another one too. Other firms are exploring policies and strategies to leverage social media in marketing and sales. So now we see two different summaries. Now when we put the two summaries together, we can now put across on top of them another statement that will tie the two of them together. So it's like a funnel. You have this view here, you have this view here. So how can we say these are two different views? So it means that there is a view, that you have conflicting views, or there are some concerns that have been raised. So that's what he said here. There are concerns that have been raised concerning implications of social networking on employers and employees. The employer one is then given, and then the employees one is also then given. That's all that you see here. So learn to be able to summarize look out for what is the core essence or core argument in this particular reading I'm reading. What can I say out of here? What can I say out of here? And how can are they comparable? Are they discussing the same issue? This one, they are both discussing the same issue about social networking in the workplace. One of them is concerned about access to passwords. Another is concerned about strategy issues. When I put the two together, I can say there are concerns from employers and employees. That's what I can say as my other summary statement. So when you do that, your objective is to now continue and write and put the two summaries together, add their references, and then you have a paragraph that you have put together. So then the paragraph comes, when the references come here, and the paragraph comes to the opening sentence. Then again, beyond the concern on the growth of in the use of social media, social networking in the workplace, and then your full sentences or summaries then begin. So the one good thing that you should note here is that you need to know how to summarize from other people. You learn descriptive writing first, and after that, you find the relationship between the different descriptive writings you are doing to be able to put it together and turn it into an analytical piece. You start by learning how to summarize from people's readings, people's papers, other authors' papers, or people reports that you have read. What are the key things that you're arguing here? And when I say the key thing that you're arguing here, what I'm trying to say is that when you look at the abstract, when you look at the conclusion, is there any argument that will help support your work? Sometimes you may not find anything in the abstract, but you may find what you're looking for in the conclusion or in the introduction. That is one of the reasons why I try to emphasize that when students are downloading the paper, they should try to know what is in the paper. So that when they are naming the file name, they can put in what is the core essence of what is in the paper in the file name. When you do that, even when you're reading different sections of people's work, try to make notes. Okay, this paper has a very good definition of corruption from a behavioral perspective. This one too has another definition of corruption from a structural perspective. Now I want to write the definition of corruption. So I'll start by saying that I've read two different papers. They have did, and then I also go and check Transparency International. And I check another one from maybe, let's say, World Bank. So World Bank has a definition, Transparency International has a definition. There's one academic paper that's from a behavioral perspective, and another one from a structural perspective. What did I say? I'll end up saying that corruption enjoys a plurality of definitions from both academics and practitioners. For example, in the work of maybe then I mentioned the name of the academic, the same name of the academic, like I'll just say Carmen 2009, from a behavioral perspective, define corruption as this. Then also from a structural perspective, I can then say Jackson defined corruption as that. On the other hand, practitioners have a different view of what corruption is. Transparency International defines corruption as this, whilst let's say the World Bank defines corruption as that. Comparing the Transparency International definition and the World Bank definition, I tend to say there's an economic perspective of corruption. So now we can say there's a behavioral perspective, there's a corruption perspective, there's a structural perspective, and then there is lastly an economic perspective. In my thesis, I'm combining both the economic perspective and then the structural perspective. So the thesis defines, in this work, I define corruption as, and I then combine what I want to combine and write it. What have I done? I read from different authors and I put them together. Analytically, that is better to write this way than rather go and say, corruption is this. This one, corruption is defined as this, and you just go on with your work. Now, you didn't do any synthesis to show that you have been able to have read widely. When I did what I've done, I've told you that I've done read from practitioners and I read from academics. I've also been able to do a synthesis of the different definitions, and I'm able to produce a definition. Now, what I'm trying to do here to show that even sometimes if I don't produce a new definition, I can choose one of the definitions. But I need to justify why I made that choice. So I'll show you the other definitions and then make a choice of a definition and explain why I made that choice. Now, this is better than just going ahead and just taking one definition and stating it out. Because if you do that, there's no way that we can check or you can convince us who are your audience, that you looked at other definitions, you reviewed other possible definitions and other existing definitions to be able to come and make a choice analytically that based on A, B, and C, you are choosing this definition. This is very, very important to learn how to do, and that's what we are trying to do here. Okay, so literature review is not just a summary of our materials you have read. It's argument, evidence, and illustration. Argument, illustration, evidence. Argument, illustration, and evidence. This said, let's talk about how do you structure the review. In writing a piece of paragraph, writing a piece of paragraph in your work, it's always good to know that every paragraph should have an introductory sentence, a body, and a concluding sentence. Sometimes a concluding sentence may not be there because the paragraph may lead into another paragraph that will rather conclude the previous paragraph. So an introductory sentence, a body, and a concluding sentence. That's one thing I want to let you understand. So let's look at an example. Another thing that you should also know is that when people are writing, they can write from different perspectives. Sometimes people write thematically. Others also try to write based on the timeline. Others also try to write based on methodology. Somebody will be asking, say, so which of them should I use? You can use a combination of these three, even in a piece of writing. What do I mean by that? When somebody writes by methodology, he's writing according to either the different methods, quantitative, qualitative, or even different countries or geographic regions. So somebody may even argue that is writing like contextually. Let me give an example. When we read the paper here, the paper we just looked at, the first argument the person put across was that there have been tremendous growth in the mobile phone ownership and use globally. So he's now writing in terms of geographic locations. So first of all, he says globally, then gives the reference for it. Then he goes on to talk about another reference for developing world against developed world. So he's still doing contextual arguments. He's trying to show this one against this one. So two geographic locations. So that's what I'm saying. You are even arguing based on the methods used or where the data is coming from. Then he goes on to say in Ghana, then states Ghana's own. So if you look at it very carefully, he's just going through different geographic locations and trying to show why this work situates as a global issue. He's talking about globally, then goes back to develop again, develop, then goes to Ghana. Then he makes an argument again on developing economies. So that is one example that you may see. The next type of arguments is going to argue thematically. Look at this one here. I'll show examples as we go, more examples too. Initial efforts to find answers to this question can be analyzed from two themes, two perspectives, practitioner and then academic. The initiatives of mobile phone network operators, banks, entrepreneurs, government and development agencies characterize efforts from practitioner perspective. So who are the people who are arguing from practitioner perspective? He has put it there. These efforts, and he's telling what they have been doing, these practitioners have been doing. These efforts tend to focus on the design and adoption of mobile applications for microfinance and activities or to enhance access to financial services. Look at this, Donald 2007 and then CGAP 2008. Now let's go to Donald 2007. Let's check the reference. Donald 2007. Donald 2007. So you have Donald 2007 is a conference paper. The guy called Jonathan Donald, I know him. A conference was presented at the pre-conference on mobile communication at the International Communication Association. So it's a practitioner even conference. Then I mentioned apart from Donald, it was CGAP. CGAP is C. CGAP 2008, consultative group to assess the poor, Washington DC, and then gives their website address. This is a focus note. It is coming from a practitioner again, practitioner community, or a research agency who are full of practitioners too. Now, so you see that is coming from practitioner perspective. So it's coming from thematically, coming from practitioner perspective. Then it goes on to say efforts addressing the impact of mobile phones on development concerns and combating poverty and stimulating economic growth are quite few. That is looking at a gap. I don't want to talk about gaps right now, but I'm just trying to show you the writing style. This imbalance is also reflected in the academic research front. So Duncan and Boateng is an academic work because he has pointed academic research front. There is preponderance of research activities, research studies documenting the business model that characterize the initial efforts of practitioners, mobile operators, and banks. Academics have begun to catch up with the studies seeking development solutions through mobile phones. Then it gives another set of papers here, Hicks and Jaguar Donor 2010, and Zuckerman 2010. When you check these ones, they are all academic papers. They are even actually journal articles. So what am I trying to emphasize here? So sometimes academics write thematically by looking at different themes. So one theme from practitioners, one theme from academics. And then they can also write according to geographic locations by looking at developing and then develop. I don't know whether you remember that there was a time that we read on some work that Professor Abo had done. And we said that he wrote on corporate governance, and he said that corporate governance has been highlighted in previous studies as influencing firms' financial decisions. Then he went on to say these empirical studies have tended to focus more on developed economies with inconclusive results. So now looking at developed economies. Then he says that in sub-Saharan Africa, very little has been done on corporate governance in sub-Saharan Africa. Then especially with firms financing decisions. So you have seen that he has developed economies as against developing, then he goes to sub-Saharan Africa. Then after that, he went to Ghana. So sometimes you see authors doing that. They look at different geographic locations and look at how contributions are has come around concerning the phenomenon. Why did they do that? They do that to be able to show that they are read extensively. And this phenomenon they are discussing with you is not just based on Ghana or Nigeria. It's something that has a global discourse, or it's a global phenomenon. Other countries are also experiencing such a challenge. That's why they try to write from that perspective. Okay, so let's go back and then see other examples on our slides. We'll come back to another paper as we go on. Okay, so we have here chronological writing. Chronological writing, I read this earlier about the fact that something is happening over time. Now, academics write chronologically because they want to show that the issue they are discussing has got different perspectives over time, or sometimes has not even changed over time, but they want to show that. So there's a trend that they want to indicate. Somebody said, do I have to do this for all my works? No, you don't need to do this for all your works. You do it when it's necessary. So if you want to show a point that this has not changed since a particular time, then you can then do that. But if it's not necessary, you don't need to do that. Okay. So, and you may not need to even go through three different timelines. You can even compare two different timelines. You can compare even before 2010 and after 2010, or before 2020 and after 2020. Or you can even look at event pre-COVID-19 and post-COVID-19. So pre-COVID-19, what are the viewpoints about entrepreneurship in Ghana? After post-COVID-19, what are the new viewpoints that are coming up? So somebody's comparing two events. It could happen that events are defined by time. So it's also using chronological perspective of arguments. Okay. Now, when a person does chronological arguments, it has to also reflect in the timeline. You can't say in the late 1990s, researchers argued that. So who are the researchers? It means that when we look at the papers, you are talking about papers that were published around that time, or were summarizing issues that happened around that time. Look at Uche's work. Uche 2000. Unemployment in the banking industry in Nigeria. Then over 2,000 bank employees lost their jobs at the end of 1999. So you see that it looks at that timeline. Then it goes on to around by 2004. Then it has papers that were published around 2004 to show that. Then it goes again to say 2011, political instability. And then there's other countries that have gone through that kind of scenario or challenges to also support the work. So whenever you're writing chronologically, look at the timelines and the papers that you are trying to use to show that evidence. I'm not saying that go and write by timeline. You only do that when it is necessary. Okay. Especially to show a trend. Then the other type of writing is thematically, like I mentioned earlier. So somebody can write thematically when you look at a definition of an issue where you want to compare different definitions from different themes. Somebody can also write thematically when he's writing a whole section. For example, I'm writing a whole section on maybe structure of unemployment. So I need to discuss what is unemployment. That's the first theme I'll look at. Then what are the causes of unemployment? That's another set of themes I'll look at. So, or I can look at poverty and look at three different themes under poverty: education, employment, and income. Now, when I say I'm doing that, it means that I've downloaded papers to help me write that way. So whenever you are writing, try to have a purpose of what you are writing for that section, even if it's a small paragraph. What is the purpose of the paragraph? What am I trying to write? And how many words am I trying to write there? So that can help you to be able to put something across. I emphasize the other time that we met that whenever somebody is writing, to be able to also write very well, especially analytically, bringing different sources together, we advise that, and I'm emphasizing, we advise that at least every 50 words, you have one unique reference. Sometimes even authors even do more than what I'm even recommending. Every 50 words, you have got one unique reference. Okay, so let's pause and then go to see another paper that has an example that may be related to writing thematical. Let's see whether the one by Elijah did a thematic writing. Okay, so look at the literature review section. Okay, female entrepreneurship. So the theme is here, the core theme here is female entrepreneurship. So female entrepreneurship has been recognized during the last decade. Now you see chronological writing has come here, even though he's writing thematically. He's talking last decade. Now he's using time as an important untapped source of economic growth. Now, studies have shown that female entrepreneurship has a positive impact on economic development in a number of ways. These include employment creation, economic growth, innovation, and in diversity of entrepreneurship. Jamali 2009 and Verhel and Van Mil 2011. Women-owned businesses are one of the fastest growing entrepreneurial populations in the world. Another world again, now geographic again. So it brings references to that. If you check the references, it will to show you that it covers, let's check that of Henry et al. 2016. Henry et al. Somebody say, Paul, what is this et al. That you are saying? We'll talk about that when you are doing referencing. That's next week. Okay, Henry et al. Henry et al. is from a journal, Gender Entrepreneurship Research, a review of methodological approach, a review. So it means that somebody has reviewed different papers and he has come up with a conclusion. Review. So a review paper can give you diverse arguments or diverse perspectives from different papers. Okay, so let's look at it. Please, sorry about that. Okay. So that's it. In a diverse and increasing specialized area, see, the theme is about entrepreneurship, a female entrepreneur. So it's called an area. It is notable that there are relatively few studies consider the position of women as business owners. He's criticizing the literature on female entrepreneurship. The empirical findings and recommendations have been reported are diverse and often contradictory. Another gap is pointing out. Literature on female entrepreneurship has traditionally focused on distinctive characteristics of female, and now he's discussing the different aspects of literature. He's now focused on just the literature on female entrepreneurship and male entrepreneurs in terms of motivation, personality traits, features of their firm size, such as firm size, goals, access to capital management, and performance. So look at all the references. Now, do you realize that after almost every sentence has about 2 references or 1 reference there? So even the 50 words I was saying 1 reference, it doesn't even work. It's even more than that. It's like every 20 words has 1 reference. Or maybe look at this one like this. 50 words, about 50 words has about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 references. Notably absent is an understanding of factors affecting growth intention. Another gap is pointing out here. Okay, so let me just jump here and go to another one. Female entrepreneurship in the tourism sector. So it's now coming to a sub-theme. The role of female entrepreneurs is rather neglected in the tourism entrepreneurship research. So where is he now reading? Only tourism entrepreneurship research. The previous session was just reading general entrepreneurship research. That's female entrepreneurship research. Now this part is for tourism entrepreneurship research, which focuses on females. So it's rather difficult to observe the emergence of specific issues or areas of literature on women entrepreneurship in tourism. So what is he talking about? Women entrepreneurship in tourism. I'm looking for papers on that one to read. This is one of the reasons I was saying that know what you are writing at every section and know what you want to say so that you draw the literature that is needed for that section. That every section you're writing should have a purpose, and that purpose should guide you on what literature will be relevant for that area. I want to jump again. Another section, growth intention. The growth intention of the entrepreneur has generally been identified as being given a definition as being the entrepreneur's goals and or aspirations for growth trajectory he or she would like to venture or follow. So it gives the reference there. Growth of a business is widely recognized as a choice, and most business owners choose choose not to grow. So he's giving reference. Many ventures fail to achieve substantial growth. So every year, 10 years about growth and entrepreneurship. It's another theme here. Determinants of growth intention. So now he's going to look at different determinants. In this study, the determinants impacting on growth intention are classified into three categories, three themes again. So you're going thematically again. Entrepreneurship ability, one theme. Opportunity within the tourism environment, another theme. And business advisory and support service, another theme. So let's start. Entrepreneurship ability. It refers to the ability, so that theme is going to be discussed. Another section, it goes on and on and on. Then it goes to another theme, should be another theme here. Opportunities within the tourism sector. He starts again. Another theme is going to be discussed. Then it goes on business advisory services, another theme. So what you see here is thematic writing and occasionally some geographic or methodological writing coming in. And then sometimes he also does a little bit of what we call chronological writing, where he looks at different factors. But most importantly, he is discussing the issues based on what is necessary for him to, the style he's using is based on what is necessary for him to write at that section. Let me see whether I'll see another style that is being used anywhere. Okay, this is about methodology. Okay. So I've been able to show some things. Okay, this is discussion. Discussion, usually are comparing your findings with your previous studies that has been done. So every time he said that the findings are significantly related to Cliff 1998, who provide that managerial competencies have positive impact on growth intention of business. So the findings he has is comparable or related to that of Cliff. So you see that I mentioned that you find your finding, then you compare it to what others have said. So look at where his findings are. The findings suggested that the lack of motivation by a majority of respondents to grow, expand to greater level can be explained as unintended consequences of limitations in their own overall entrepreneurial abilities. This is related to constraints in acquiring financial resources for expansion. The limited level of skills possessed in the tourism sector, as well as low managerial and technical skills in tourism entrepreneurship, also contributed to the negative growth expectations of some of the entrepreneurs. Now, when he finishes all these things, then goes on to point out that these findings are significantly related to that of Cliff. So, and then in addition, he points another one. So in discussion, you are comparing the findings with existing research. That's what you do in discussion, compare the findings with existing research. That's what you are seeing the person doing here. Okay. So let's go back to our slides and see other types of writing. So now we have discussed thematic. We have also discussed sometimes chronological writing that we saw. And we are also now seeing that of methodological writing or even contextual writing, comparing different areas. So this is another thematic writing where a person breaks it into four parts. He's writing on impact of mobiles on micro trading. The first part is about what is trading, then goes on to stages of trading and benefits of mobiles, and then goes to impact of mobiles. So you can see there are different ways of bringing the literature together. Then sometimes you can also write according to method, where you look at the geographical region, comparing developed against developing, rural against urban. Sometimes the case study, the type of method of data collection, or even the level, whether individual level, organizational level, national level, or cross-country. All these styles, you see them in how people write. But I'll have to say that if your argument does not need that, you don't need to use a particular style. Most of the time, students will be doing develop against developing, country against country, and maybe sometimes, majority of the time, they will also do thematic writing. Then sometimes they bring in chronological writing. You can mix a number of them in a given paragraph. So far as the argument makes sense. The argument makes sense. Let me just show you something here. Do you realize that here, this part of this whole thing about Africa is also doing geographic or methodological writing? He's comparing different countries or different regions. So Nigeria was West Africa. It came back to Ghana, and then Ghana and Uganda. That's East Africa against West Africa. Then it came to North Africa. That's coming to Salia. Then it went to Cote d'Ivoire and Sierra Leone. So still in West Africa. So you see that he's comparing West Africa, East Africa, and then some part of North Africa. That's what you see happening in this particular writer. So he's also doing chronological writing, but occasionally doing comparisons across different regions in Africa. Okay. So now let's go back to our previous example, social networking in the workplace. We said that every write-up that you have, you should have an introduction. So this one, the introduction is this sentence that came here. Social networking, so let me highlight the introduction. Then after that, he brought the body. The body was what he was trying to present the argument, the different evidences in. Then when you finished, he had another paragraph that leads into, the first paragraph led into another sentence. Then another, when you finish that part, it led into another concluding paragraph. Somehow, businesses have to respond to this growing phenomenon. However, the questions are, should employers be concerned? What are the potential risks and benefits of social networking in the workplace? And how can businesses address the risk? So that's what you see the person saying here. That's what you see the person saying here. So he's putting he has made to put the two together. What am I trying to say here? You have a concluding paragraph. And then you have a concluding paragraph, and then you have an opening paragraph. And all of them tend to talk about the same thing. So the concluding paragraph and the opening paragraph. And then you also have a body. Whenever you are writing, try to look out for these things. Okay. So let me go back to our papers and let me just try to see if I can find an example for us to look into. So let's see this particular one that we're looking at earlier. Okay. Good. So let me look at a conclusion whether so in the introduction of the work, so it began here. There has been a marked increase in female entrepreneurial activity, and recent business statistics identify women as the drivers of the economic growth in many world economies. So it gives the references for that. And then he goes on to say that countries with high total entrepreneurial activity associated with high female entrepreneurial activity. This is underscored. What is underscored? This particular phenomenon where females tend to dominate in countries there is high entrepreneurial activity. This is underscored by the general fit from large state-owned corporation to small, medium enterprise. In Ghana, as in most African countries, entrepreneurship has not become strong. So he had an opening sentence, and then he didn't have a perfect concluding sentence, but he actually led into another example. Because here it was talking about global example. So in trying to finish that particular discussion, entered into another paragraph where he brought that of Africa, as for trying to then show that now you are discussing African countries. So in Ghana, as an example for other African countries, entrepreneurship has not become very strong. Then it goes into the Ghana issue and gives us the issues concerning Ghana. So what you are saying here that he began with the world perspective, developed countries perspective, then went to a developing country perspective, where he then looked at Ghana. He also seen that he had an opening sentence, he had a body, then the concluding paragraph rather entered into another paragraph. That started another kind of discussion. Okay, now he goes on to say that, look at the concluding sentence of the next paragraph. This broad observation shows that Ghana has a potential to develop its tourism entrepreneurial sector, particularly for women. So that's the concluding sentence for that particular, or the discussion that I said. And he was trying to point it out by starting from the developed country, made an argument that women entrepreneurship matters, because when you have high entrepreneurial activity, women are more, and then give the reasons why. Then came to Ghana, give the reasons, examples in Ghana, and also show that women tend to dominate in Ghanaian entrepreneurship, and then pointed out studies from Ghana in terms of that from the GEM and that from Elijah Mensah to be able to substantiate his argument. Then he finalizes that said this broad observation that you can see that I put across here points out so and so. So that's what he was trying to put across. Okay. So here now another paragraph starts talking about Ghana, then concludes by saying that he discusses Ghana, talks about 3 different areas: Takoradi, Cape Coast, and Accra. They said the 3 study areas are commendable, as the current study has identified a large number of women involved in various tourism businesses in the 3 sites. He's making a choice for his sites and he's justifying why he's choosing that site. That is the purpose of this paragraph. He began by giving us some information about Ghana, went on to give us statistics about tourism in Ghana, and then entrepreneurship in Ghana, and then narrowed down to the 3 areas he's going to do the study in. So every paragraph has a purpose and a focus on what he's trying to conclude in that particular paragraph. Okay. Then here he finalizes everything in saying that taking account the potential role of female entrepreneurs in generating economic growth, investigating the relationship between business opportunities for women-led companies and their growth intentions seems to be highly recommended. And that is what he's emphasizing here. There is a need to do research in that area. This paper proceeds because of all that he has said above. This is the final paragraph for the whole section called the introduction. This paper proceeds. I continue because by review, I continue based on this, I continue by reviewing the evidence in studies on female entrepreneurship. Then it goes and outline the structure of the paper. So you need to note that every section that you are writing, every paragraph that you are writing should have a focus. And after defining the focus, you should know what you seek to be able to do and how you're going to do that. What's your opening argument? What's your body? And what's your concluding argument? Sometimes the concluding argument may not be very specific. It will lead to another argument or lead to another paragraph. So let's now try to identify what a good review is and what a bad literature review is, because now we have an understanding of what to do. Okay. So this is a good review, a bad review. Sexual harassment has many consequences. Adam Kotick and Paget found out that some women students said they avoided taking a class or working with certain professors because of the risk of harassment. They also found that men and women students reacted differently. Then it goes on again. Benson and Thompson study in social problems list many problems created by sexual harassment. In their excellent book, The Professor, Dish and Wiener, 1990, give a long list of difficulties that victims suffered. None of these things tells us any of the consequences of harassment. It's all that it does is that the first one mentioned a few of them, but all that it does is that it's just summarizing different studies, one by Benson, another one by Adams, another one by Dish. So to do a good work, we rather want to see a synthesis between them. So what will happen? That will take us to the next one. Good literature review. A good literature review, we try to bring the 3 things together instead of just stating them and leaving them there. The victims of sexual harassment suffer a range of consequences, from lowered self-esteem, loss of self-confidence, to withdrawal from social interaction, change career goals, and depression. Then puts into bracket all the different studies that contribute to these particular consequences. So that's the evidence for the argument. Then it goes ahead to illustrate. For example, Adams, Kotick, and Paget noted that 13% of women students said they avoided taking a class. So if you realize this particular sentence here, they avoided taking a class or working with certain professors because of risk of harassment, is about loss of self-confidence, to withdrawal from social interaction, or sometimes even change career goals. So you are seeing that these are examples of these sentences. This sentence here from Paget and Adams, Kotick, and Paget is illustrating some of the examples of consequences that he has mentioned in there, in the previous sentence. So good literature reviews always start with an argument, then it brings evidence and illustrations, or arguments, illustration, and evidence. Sometimes somebody may even start with an illustration and then add the argument that based on this illustration, I can argue that this and that. It's always good to let them go hand in hand, argument, evidence, illustration, or argument and evidences. most of the times, the least you can do is to provide the evidence for your arguments by the references that you are putting across. Then occasionally, to enhance understanding of your evidence, you illustrate. So that is what we do in literature review. Literature review is not just a summary of available resources and materials. It's about argument, evidence, illustration, or argument, illustration, and evidence. I just want you to take your time when you go online, and now you know what you want to do, the areas of research you want to research on. Some of you have got some topics in mind. When you search for literature in that area, try to check whether there's a relationship between the three: argument, evidence, illustration. Argument, evidence, illustration. Argument, evidence, illustration. Okay then. So this brings us to the end of our class. Next time we'll meet, we'll be doing evidence, how to provide the evidences. That's literary reference. Now I mentioned that I was going to show you something. Yes, something. I mentioned that I was going to show you something on Sakai. So let's go there. I was trying to emphasize that the videos are on Sakai, and then you could actually go there. So let me share my Sakai page. How are you doing, Ifya and Andromeda, Benedicta and Xavier, and Sheila and Sandra? I hope you are all doing well. So let me go to okay. Let me go to, oh, I don't have my, okay, now I have it open. Good. Let me go to Sakai. I don't have Sakai open. Okay, so let me open Sakai. Okay, so now I have Sakai open, so you can see Sakai now. So when I open Sakai, I look for your course, the program MBAE. And then, okay, so what I wanted to show was the fact that we now have some of the information that you are asking for online. So if you go to video lessons and you choose the 1 to 4, this is the online interaction for session 1 and session 2. And then you can see it here to then session 3, starting how to find the literature, how to use Google Scholar and all those ones. You can see it in this particular video. Then, okay. Then you have another one here on how to, the third one is also here about how to search for literature, how to do your, the searches that you have to do. I'm now going to put a video on how to be able to get your research gap based on the literature you have downloaded. And also I'm going to put a video on how to write. This is kind of what I've taught today. I'm going to put a video up online concerning how to write. Hopefully by Wednesday evening to be there about how to write. So those of you who missed the lecture or you want to take your time and watch it, you could actually take your time and do so. Someone is saying that, sir, I cannot, I'm available to answer your questions within the next 10 minutes or if there are some questions.